In a stunning twist in the world of Formula One, Red Bull might be primed to make an extraordinary mid-season driver switch. Helmut Marco's recent comments have Sergio Perez's future hanging in the balance, while Daniel Ricciardo gets an unexpected lifeline. As tensions rise and the stakes get higher, the remainder of the 2023 season holds both opportunity and threat. Who will seize the moment, and who might be left in the dust? Strap in as we dive into the heart of this unfolding drama. Ricciardo was let go by McLaren at the end of last season after a hugely disappointing 2-year spell with the team. And rather than take a 2023 seat towards the back of the grid, he opted for a year out of sorts by rejoining Red Bull. The Australian established himself as one of the sport's top drivers by winning 7 races for Red Bull between 2014 and 2018. But decided to leave for Renault before moving on to McLaren 2 years later. His popularity and commercial value alone could almost guarantee him a seat at some teams. But with Ricciardo holding out for a drive in a competitive car, it remains unclear whether an offer to tempt him back onto the grid will be forthcoming. Red Bull chief Christian Horner, who oversaw Ricciardo's development with the team earlier in his career, made a quite stunning admission about the Australian. When he first turned up after the final race of 2022 in Abu Dhabi, Horner said, "I think the problem is when you drive a car that obviously has its limitations. You adapt and you try and adjust to extract the maximum out of that car." And it was clear when he came back that he picked up some habits that we didn't recognize as the Daniel that had left us 2 or 3 years earlier. Despite their initial concerns, Horner insists that after some time off during the winter, Ricciardo swiftly began to resemble a driver that won 7 races in 5 seasons with Red Bull. Having had time off over Christmas and so on, and a chance to reset, when he's come back and got into the 2023 work, he's hit the ground running, Horner said in Australia. Helmut Marco has just dropped the biggest bombshell on Sergio Perez, and it seems like the Mexican needs to be very afraid for his seat in 2024. Although he has a contract, his recent slump in performance has forced the team to make a move with Ricciardo that few hoped about. Forget about AlphaTauri. The Honey Badger might jump directly into the RB19 in the next couple of months. Is this the turning point in both of the veterans' careers? And how is this scenario likely to play out in the last 3 races? It's no secret that Perez has struggled to perform at the required level. Marco and Horner both noted critique-oriented views towards the recent results of the Mexican driver as he failed to make it into Q3, didn't score points in Monaco, and finished P4 and P6 in Barcelona and Montreal respectively. Given the fact that he has the fastest car in his hands and it's not even close, one can't help but note the massive difference between him and Verstappen. Now, obviously, Red Bull has one goal, and that's winning both championships. With Verstappen having that double lead over Mercedes and Aston Martin in the 2023 season so far, this shouldn't be an issue. Red Bull is known for not giving their drivers enough time to adapt to a certain situation, and the fact that Perez has severely underperformed in both 2022 and 2023, after claiming that he could fight for the championship, does put a certain light on this entire situation. After hiring Ricciardo as the reserve driver back in 2022 after the Brazilian Grand Prix fiasco, many thought that this was the next move towards Perez being replaced. The environment at Red Bull is harsh. You either support Verstappen as second fiddle, or you can see your own demise while trying to challenge him for the championship. Perez was given a second chance in 2023, but after being 6 points behind Verstappen after the Baku Grand Prix, with the Mexican's most recent win, everything started to go downhill for the veteran driver. Now he's 69 points behind and is under a threat of losing the second seat in the Drivers' Championship. If Red Bull sees itself struggling to keep up the pace compared to Mercedes or Aston Martin in the second half of the season, when the budget cap penalty is supposed to show its true face, this could bite the Austrian team in the back. Therefore, Red Bull opted to do something extraordinary. Give Ricciardo a chance in the RB19 after the Silverstone race in July and evaluate his driving skills for the upcoming season. This effectively means that Red Bull is ready to open the gates to a potential buyout of Perez's contract, even though he's proven to be one of Verstappen's best teammates so far. The driver that's supposed to replace him from 2024 onwards is the one that actually challenged Verstappen the most in their early days at Red Bull. But the situation with Ricciardo has shifted 180 degrees now, and he's not the same old late breaker as we knew him. The second fiddle role wouldn't be something that he cannot accept, or will have too big of an ego, and Red Bull is questioning his driving style. Marco went on to say, "After Silverstone, we will have Ricciardo in the car for 3 days at a Pirelli tire test, and there we can evaluate where, really in terms of pace, is Ricciardo." But after the latest developments of Ricciardo's situation, Marco wasn't very keen on the Mexican driver. When asked about the future between Red Bull and Perez, Marco went on to say his initial goal was 2 or 3 years. That would be more than he planned. "Anyway, we are in constant discussions and not under pressure. We have a backup solution." As Marco pointedly put it, they need to keep their options open. He doesn't want to commit to Perez for 2024 if his performance isn't living up to Red Bull standards. As for the effect of this on the careers of Perez and Ricciardo, it could be a defining moment. Perez would be wise to step up his game in the remaining races of the season, as he'll be under pressure from both his team and the audience. It's not unheard of for drivers to pull out unexpected performances when their seat is under threat, so he could still turn things around. On the other hand, for Ricciardo, this is a significant opportunity to return to a top-tier team and finish his career on a high note. After a disappointing stint at Renault and McLaren, a return to Red Bull could rejuvenate his career, but he will have to demonstrate that he still has the speed and consistency to compete at the highest level. Red Bull have made a dominant start to the season, winning all 3 races, with 1-2s in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. And the RB19 is undoubtedly the car that every driver on the grid would want to be in at the moment. Ricciardo is no different, and admitted, "Truthfully, Red Bull is the #1 seat. That's what I would love." However, Verstappen looks to be on his way to a 3rd successive world championship and will be going nowhere, while Perez's contract runs until the end of 2024, creating a couple of major obstacles for Ricciardo. There has also been speculation that in the event Verstappen or Perez were unable to drive in a race this season, Red Bull would promote Yuki Tsunoda from AlphaTauri rather than put Ricciardo in the seat. While that could be related to contractual obligations rather than performance expectations, it feels like Ricciardo is a long way from driving a Red Bull in competitive circumstances. What does appear likely to happen in some sort of testing of practice runout for the veteran, who according to Horner, has been enjoying driving the RB19 in the simulator. I think he likes the feel of the car in the virtual world, which seems to correlate well with what we're seeing in the actual world, and I think he's desperate to get a run in the car at some point to validate that, Horner said. I think that he's training hard and he's ready to go given the chance. While Ricciardo appears to be adamant he will only return in a competitive car, the chances of a seat becoming available at Red Bull or one of their main challengers, Mercedes, Ferrari, and Aston Martin, appears highly unlikely. Even if a desirable slot opened up, Norris, for one, would undoubtedly be ahead of Ricciardo in the queue for it. Therefore, the most realistic scenario for a permanent Ricciardo return would appear to be a team convincing him that they can follow in the footsteps of Aston Martin and take a big step forward to contend at the front. And so, as we navigate the twists and turns of this electrifying Formula 1 season, we're left with an array of burning questions. Will Perez manage to hold on to his seat? Is Ricciardo set to make a grand comeback? With so much at stake, the countdown to the next race is on, and only time will reveal the true victors. Hold on to your seats, folks. This ride is only getting started.